wondering if you ended up enjoying that aspect of the one man.
The marketing?
Yeah.
I actually did. I've always kind of been into the multi-media side of development stuff as well, so I actually really enjoyed learning and integrating the whole social networking thing. And you know, I put off becoming a Twitter user for a long time, just like I put off becoming a Facebook user for a long time. Because to me, they were just distractions. I saw their value, but I never saw how it would fit into my time. But I have to say, it's, once you get the marketing wheel working, although it is a lot of work, it's actually very gratifying. Having the communication happen about your games and your company out there in the space is great, and hearing from people, getting to talk to people, it's very fulfilling.
I could talk about marketing all day. It also brings up a lot. Super Search 60 was the first game I did on the iPhone. It took 1 month to develop, and I spent 3 months marketing it. But I learned a staggering amount, and I was able to then turn Goulding, the next game, into a #1 hit here in Australia and lots of other countries. It's something you continually learn about, and it constantly surprises you. And it's different for the platform which you're developing. Marketing, Jolly Rover, completely different to marketing little things, completely different to marketing Goulding. It's not a one-size-fits-all type thing. Some of the little things I'd suggest for those of you, I mean, probably people in the audience here are most likely to make an iPhone game than anything else I'd say at this point in their careers. Cross-promotion is the most valuable tool you can have. When Super Search 60 was launched, I had ads. It's an ad-supported application. So prior to the launch of Goulding, for 2 weeks, I switched off all my ads and said to everyone, Goulding is coming on this date. And then when it came out, Goulding is there. Go download it, please. And so I managed to flip my entire player base, which was fairly large, and get them all to download the new game in 1 day. It's essential because if everyone does that, you get a charge. I then used my advertising powers for good, and have since promoted Fruit Ninja and Scott Cameron's game, Creepy Cabins, and Train Conductor, and others I've just done for free, just helping people out, just trying to get a foothold into the iPhone market. And I wish other people do that for me also.
If I can add, Matt has also created the logo for Jolly Rover, and anytime Matt asks me to tell anyone about anything he's done, I am more than happy to do that.
I get more click-throughs and downloads from my own ad in my own app than from anything else. And if you can get partnerships with other people doing iPhone games, just forming a community together and talking about each other's games. And that's probably the best advice I can give you all. There's lots more advice I could give you, but that'll do it for today.
I think that's one thing to consider with marketing that doesn't really sound like it's marketing, and it's only something that I learned in retrospect after I released my iPhone game, was that you've got to, marketing also means what is your target audience. It's not what comes at the end with the promoting and the sending out of emails and the, hey, on my Twitter, you know, like the game is out. It's also an analysis of who are you making this game for, what are their demographics, what are they like? Is your game going to fit with that? Is your game going to fit with the current trend of what is being, brought the most in the price range? Does your $2 game not fit because most people are now buying $1, $5 or $10 games and not really caring about what's in between those? So there's a lot of research that needs to go on to evaluate your game to its merits of, will it even make money in the first place when you start development?
So just going off that, I mean, what do you guys think is important? If one of the guys in the audience here came to you and showed you their game and you thought that's not going to sell because it's just not commercial, would you try and persuade them to try and make it more marketable, or would you say no, stay true to your original vision?
They've got to believe in the idea itself before it's going to fly.
But what about if you think that that's not going to make any money for them and they'll just end up...
If the money is important, then absolutely they should change the game, in my opinion.
even if you end up making games that you know are very liked out there, that's not necessarily the type of game that you would play, that is still okay if that's what you want to do. Okay? There is this whole, and I apologise, I don't mean to offend anyone, but there is this whole purist thing about making games that, it has to be the game you want to make, you have to be the most passionate about the game for it to fly. It's not necessarily true, okay? Because there are plenty of games out there that you could mimic that have done, especially in the iPhone market, that have done millions and millions of dollars. And you could mimic a game like that even something you don't enjoy and still make some good money out of it. Okay? Just decide why you're doing it.
Yeah, it comes down to that as well. Like, there's nothing to say that you can't share both the creative vision and the economic vision. And in fact, if you're trying to have your cake and eat it too, it's not an impossible task, and it's probably something good for you because you're trying to grow a business. So you're trying to fulfill the desires and agendas of both you and your team, as in what kind of game will not drive them, crazy, but at the same time, what can stand to see the light of day and allow us to eat at the end of the day as well, because that's what it comes down to. It's about paying rent and eating. Anything after that is just gravy. Sheep and gravy.
This might be a little bit of a sticky question, but how do you go about doing your market research, and how do you protect your IP during that process?
Well, the number one way to protect your IP is to not tell anyone. Basically, chances are, unless your game is the most kind of originally obscure concept ever in the world of ever, there has been a game that's kind of like yours. If you can do some research and digging and kind of see what games that are like yours and see how they've been received and how well they did, then you can gauge a kind of a good idea of how yours will fare. That's why you get so many zombie games, it's like, well, zombie is the thing, so let's attach zombie to this, and it's got guaranteed sales, Doodle Zombie Blitzed Jeweled Super Edition Plus.
I think the market research really has to be targeted towards the kind of game you're making. You can use games that are in the top 10 as market research, and you can assume a certain amount of sales for that. And it really depends on both the type of game and the platform you're going for. So if you're looking at iPhone, you've got actually a lot of fantastic data to be able to tell whether this game may do okay or not. 360 is also really good for getting data on that kind of thing. If you're looking at the PC market, you can pay for research on demographics and what sort of games people play. That can be quite expensive. For myself, for adventure games, I looked at the kind of traffic that adventure game enthusiast websites are getting, and I contacted the webmasters and got some figures around that. So I don't know if there's really any hard and fast rule. You can use Google Analytics and Google Zeitgeist to see what sort of things are trending, but it's really hard to get that kind of concrete data. But I'm sure there is that data around, just publishers can have access to it because they know exactly what's going to be hot next year, or they think they do.
I don't think it's that important to protect your IP. I mean, most ideas are just derivatives of other ideas anyway. And if your idea is that original, that it's going to be copyrighted, it's probably not going to sell because no one will know what it is. My opinion, games need to be about 25% original and 75% rip-off, and that's probably an original agreement.
I was going to add to that, you don't want to try to protect your IP. If you're trying to protect what you're doing, then you're not actually working on what you're working on.
Just crazy, like we're talking about before.
Yeah.
Telling you what you do.
Yeah, you have to share. I mean, obviously, if you want to build a brand, if you want to build a franchise out of a particular product, maybe look at trademarking the logo or trademarking a name. If you want to have some longevity with it. But other than that, just concentrate on making it, build it. Once it's out there, people are going to copy it anyway. That's fine. And as Chris said, the chance that you probably copy some elements of someone else's game whether you knew it or not. So just go, run really fast.
Another slides break down like iPhone sales, Wii sales, like DSi sales, I think as well. And you can some pretty good figures that give a good idea of what how strong those markets are and just how time of the industry as well.
Yeah, although just to say that data's pretty old now.
Yeah,
And yeah,
Sales analytics has actually been big business for decades now. There's a company in the UK that basically takes an amount of statistics for iPhone and Facebook games and social networking, and they put it into a package. Now, as a business, you have to buy 3 of these packages, and each of them cost £500 a year. Just to give you an idea of what kind of money people are paying for to get analytical data of, reliable source.
Just kind of leading off of that a little bit, setting price for your games. How did you come to those conclusions quickly? I know it's quite a big one, but if you can kind of sum up.
arrogantly. I started setting my prices arrogantly. I want to sell, my first games I released were $20 on the Mac or PC for a single user license, and $30 for a 3-user family pack. And I didn't care whether they were worth it or not. That was the price I wanted to sell them at. And in hindsight, it was probably a good move, because I think a lot of indies get really scared about making sure that they get sales, so they consider discounting or dropping their prices too early. And as we saw with the iPhone market, it went to 99 cents really quickly for most, and went to 99 cents really quickly. That it just undervalued everything, and it undervalued development, and it made it harder for anyone to make any money off the iPhone. And there's still a market for 99 cents games on the iPhone. There's also a market for $3 and $5 and $10 games on the iPhone, and people spend money. So don't have fear. Set your price according to what you want to make.
According to the game.
Yeah, according to the game. You don't be totally unreasonable.
Yeah. Price is a really tricky issue when deciding what to sell your game at. Obviously, if you sell your game for cheaper, you probably sell more copies. I've heard people say that this isn't the case. Some people say that you'll sell the same amount of copies, so you'll just make less money. But I really don't think that that's the case at all. And unfortunately, I really think you have to look at the market and see what they're coming out with, because in the 90s you could sell a point-and-click adventure for $60, and that just seems like a hell of a lot of money now. You just can't do that anymore. You have to look at, probably a good idea is to look at what games are out there that are similar. And, well, I wouldn't say undercut, because that can actually hurt you, the perception of your game as well. Actually putting your game up for slightly more than other games is a perceived is perceived quality in some places. 2 years ago, all casual games were $19.99 US standard, and then one website, Big Fish, decided that they were going to discount their games to $6.99, and everyone tried to resist this trend, but as Big Fish got more and more hits and more sales, everyone just kind of followed suit. And I unfortunately think that as indies, we're constantly competing with each other on price, and as game developers as well. If you go and see an indie movie, you're paying the same amount per ticket as you are for a big blockbuster movie. I really wish we had that kind of system for games, and we stop squabbling with each other over price and just have people play what they want to play. But that's my utopian dream. But I think you really have to be, you really have to look at what customers are willing to pay for it. Yeah, one price.
I think it's interesting because it's a market that doesn't have any standardised price metrics. So